Hello, buddy. All right. Well, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Thursday. Today is Thursday, July the 10th, 2025. Hopefully, everybody's having a good week as we're in the latter part of the week here. So, of course, as usual, we're going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. Before we talk about what's on tap for tonight. So, anyways, friendly reminder, of course, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Anyways, so today I did watch like the first, I guess, I watched at least some of the cartoons that came out in November of 1938, including, of course, probably one of the last cartoons that it was the last Fleischer cartoon that May Quetzal provided the voice for Olive Oil in before they, of course, moved down to Miami, a date to skate. Let's see, there was, of course, a couple of Universal cartoons in there featuring Babyface Mouse. You had Color Rhapsody of The Moth and the Flame. So, quite a few interesting little things there. Let's see. Let's see now. So let's see. It's like 2.5 minutes. So let's see. Let me see now. What else can we talk about here? Let's see. So, yeah, even though I know it's a tad earlier than I would normally do this, I guess I'll just go ahead and well, let me at least go one more time here and see if there's anybody that may be interested in coming and watching this that I can find. Alrighty then. So let's see that maybe now. Yeah, well, we're almost at the 4 minute mark now. So I guess I'll go ahead and talk about what's on tap for tonight. So tonight, of course, we're going to go over 3 articles from BTV Tunes. We got one involving, of course, the Flintstones, one involving Chuck Jones's roles on the Roadrunner, and then one involving Lucille Bliss. So with the Flintstones one, it's talking about the most frequently searched topics in regards to the Flintstones. Let's see. Yeah, most searched questions about the Flintstones. Chuck Jones' rules of the Roadrunner. And then Lucille Bliss auditioned for Hanna-Barbera for 15 years before landing Smurfette. So those are the 3 articles we're going to be looking at tonight, going over and learning a little bit more about some interesting stuff there. Also, aside from that, of course, we'll, of course, after that, we'll be doing the wrestling wrap-up. Look back to last night's Dynamite. It's a go-home Dynamite before... It's the go home Dynamite before for this Saturday's All In pay per view. We'll be looking ahead tonight. There's going to be a special edition of Collision tonight, in lieu of the fact that, of course, with All In being on Saturday, Collision's normal date. They decided to push it up to Thursday here. Also, we'll look ahead to what's going on TNA and Ring of Honor. We'll look at, probably look a little bit ahead to potentially Ring of Honor and AEW's weekend here, as they'll have, Ring of Honor will have Supercard of Honor, and then AEW will have All In. So we'll be looking at that. Then we'll wrap things up, of course, with this day in each history, looking back on some significant stuff that happened in this day in each history. So with that being said, now coming up on 6 minutes here, I believe. So why don't we go ahead and get started then? Let me go ahead and pull up the article here, first article here that we're going to get over. Alrighty then. Here's the first one here. Most searched questions about the Flintstones. You asked, we answered. Article published July the 8th, which would have been, of course, 2 days ago, by MeTV2 staff. So let's see what's going down here. All right, so the Flintstones universe is vast and filled with details. There's a rock or a dinosaur for everything. They have cars, but they don't have shoes. They celebrate holidays for things that should be in the future. It gets confusing after a while. Yeah, like Christmas, right? We've seen a number of of Flintstone Christmas specials over the years, haven't we? Anyway, and a friendly reminder, of course, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So with that being said, there are so many conflicting details that even the most dedicated fans are left with some questions. We have compiled a list of the most searched questions about the Flintstones and have answers for almost, in parentheses there, all of them. Let's get to the rock bottom of your burning questions about the Flintstones. Quote, what did the Flintstones eat? Lots of stuff. On the show, they eat Brontosaurus burgers, barbecued pterodactyl, and mammoth ribs. They also eat fruits and vegetables along with modern day foods like birthday cakes and sandwiches. Yeah, so basically they ate a lot of the same stuff we did, just in terms of on the meat side of it, instead of like cow, instead of like beef, fish. Even though they probably did have fish in there, they're like beef and chicken and all that. It was more like brontosauruses and pterodactyls and mammoths. Number 2, in parentheses, what did the Flintstones have that was made out of rock? Well, I would think that'd just be about everything. Stone. Because we constantly see it just about everywhere, right? Most objects in the Flintstones are at least partially made out of rocks. The rock bell phone, new slabs, clocks, the Flintmobile, all come to mind. Fences, mailboxes, as you can see in the picture there with Grandma Pearl with Pebbles and Bam Bam there. You see they're of course standing next to the fence there. like the rock fence, the stone fence. Mailboxes and furniture all appeared to be made of rock as well. Number 3. What did the Flintstones use for money? There are multiple forms of currency used in the Flintstones, the most common being dollar bills, dollar slabs, clams, and sand dollars. They also use small coin like rocks. Number 4. Number 4. Why did the Flintstones celebrate Christmas? And there we see a scene from where Fred is portraying a department store Santa in 1964 episode of Flintstones Christmas, or a Christmas Flintstone, I believe. Fans catch this one a lot. How can cavemen celebrate an event that happens thousands of years after their existence? And of course, I think we did see another article, what was it, a couple weeks ago, a few weeks back, where they did talk about, are we really sure that the Flintstones is really in the past and the Jetsons is in the future? Maybe the Flintstones are the ones actually in the future, because they have a lot of the stuff that you wouldn't normally find. And maybe somebody, I know in an article we read a few weeks ago, somebody made kind of made the argument, well, could the Flintstones possibly be a post-apocalyptic world as opposed to prehistorical world? So let's see. After their existence, some fans have jumped to the conclusion that Bedrock exists in a post-apocalyptic future, or that Santa Claus transcends time and space. Yeah, as I just said with the first part of that sentence. The real answer is that Christmas and holiday specials perform well, and Hanna-Barbera wanted to attract new audience members to the show. So basically, the idea is, well, yeah, as we always talk about the whole idea, okay, the Flintstones are the modern Stone Age family, right? So yeah, let's throw them into a Christmas special, and of course, there have been several Flintstone Christmas specials. As I said, a Christmas Flintstone, the episode from the Flintstones original series. You have the Flintstones Christmas, Flintstones Family Christmas, Flintstones Christmas Carol, all that. We talk about it almost every year around the time of Christmas, of course. Number 5. Did the Flintstones have a cat? Yes, they did. His name is Baby Puss. And there it is right there. Baby Puss, though, doesn't, outside of the opening, you don't really see Baby Puss a whole lot. Dino is usually the pet that gets featured quite a bit in the Flintstones. You don't really see Baby Puss there a whole lot, with the exception, of course, in the beginning, or no, not the beginning, but the end of the episode, in which Fred is putting him out, putting out for the night. When did the Flintstones exist? They are called a Stone Age family, so our guess is that they existed anytime before 3,300 BC. And there's Barney having himself a Bronto leg, I guess, as it were. And then number 7. When did the Flintstones come out? Flintstones premiered on September 30th, 1960. And of course, they ran from the original run, which was on ABC primetime programming, along with Top Cat, I believe, and then eventually the Jetsons, was ran from 1960 to 1966. So 7 TV seasons, basically. Number 8. Why are the Flintstones barefoot? Because cavemen don't have shoes. Just kidding. We don't know the answer to this one. Well, I would imagine that if the whole argument is that they're in the Stone Age, I'm pretty sure that a lot of like cavemen probably didn't even think a whole lot about the concept of footwear, right? They just went around, but then you would argue, they usually have the loincloth. You see, how Fred and Barney there have their loincloths and all that, but you didn't really have a lot of. You probably, depending upon the time, because we did see in other cartoons, afterwards, like Mighty Mites, that were based in, like, I guess, Stone Age time periods or what have you. They did have some shoes, as it were. Anyways, continuing on here. Number 9, was the Flintstones ever in black and white? Yes. They originally aired in black and white for the first 2 seasons, which were later colorized, and the following seasons aired in color. So when the first 2 seasons, the 60-61 and 61-62 seasons came out, they were in black and white, and then they colorized them later, I guess, when they decided to repackage them and all that for syndication and all that. I think most of us have seen them only in color. So, number 10, did the Flintstones ever meet the Jetsons? I'm surprised this one is even a question, because I think most of us who grew up do remember the Jetsons meet the Flintstones, which was and that's where they did meet the Jetsons in the TV movie. The Jetsons meet the Flintstones. Both families met when the Jetsons accidentally time traveled. So now, of course, this movie came out in 1987, I believe. So, and of course, you have Fred and George right there, of course, being voiced by the late great Henry. Well, by this time, of course, Henry Corden, the late great Henry Corden, taking over the role of Fred at this point, and of course, the late great George O'Hanlon as the voice of George there. Wilma Flintstone, of course, voiced by the late great Gene Vanderbilt. Was the Flintstones based on the Honeymooners? Yes, both co-creators of the show, Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera, have credited the Honeymooners as their inspiration for the Flintstones. And as I've read before here in some articles too, the inspiration seems so close that I think even Jackie Gleason at one point had tried to sue to prevent the Flintstones from being aired, because he felt that it was too close to. But of course, Hanna-Barbera did win out on that particular case, I believe. I think eventually Jackie Gleason did drop the lawsuit. But yeah, so so number 12 here. Were the Flintstones giants or Neanderthals? The Flintstones were not giants or Neanderthals. They were cavemen, which makes them Homo sapiens and not Neanderthals. Yeah. I'm actually surprised anybody would even think that they were Neanderthals, or, well, okay, maybe Neanderthals, because most people don't know the difference between Neanderthals and cavemen. But giants, no, they were all like regular sized humans there. Number 13. Why do the Flintstones have different eyes? Some characters, including Wilma and Barney, just have black eyes, black dots for eyes, while others, like Fred and Betty, have whites in their eyes. Nobody really knows why this design choice was made. The most likely explanation is that the eyes of some characters were changed to slightly differentiate the cast while still making limited animation possible. It's also kind of possible that this probably could have been something due to that. Remember, as we noted in an earlier question there, some of the early episodes of the Flintstones were in black and white. So maybe during that period there, to differentiate a little bit, they did, just have some characters with just like black dots for eyes, basically. Anyways, we continue on here. 14. Why did the Flintstones end? The Flintstones ended in 1966 after the 6th season, likely due to declining ratings, but the end wasn't long because shortly after the original series was canceled, the long line of Flintstone spin-offs began. Yeah, well, actually, the first spin-off, I think, wasn't until 1971, 5 years after the show with, Pebbles and Bam Bam. However, they did get a syndicated run, sure, I think at some point after, which many of us probably grew up watching, and you can, of course, and watch the Flintstones on MeTV Tunes every day at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Pacific. So there we go with that one. So there's that one. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to, of course, the next article here. All right, so here we go with the next article. Hey, Metal. Thanks for dropping in. A friendly reminder to everybody, of course, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. And with that, let's get into this next article here. So, Chuck Jones Rules of the Roadrunner. Beep, beep. Article published July 9th, which was, of course, yesterday by MeTV Toon staff. So here we go. See what Chuck Jones's Rules of the Roadrunner were. So, it turns out that even in the wild world of Looney Tunes, there are rules. In his autobiography, Chuck Amuck, The Life and Times of an Animated Cartoonist, Chuck Jones explained why cartoons need rules. The rules and disciplines are properly difficult to identify, but there must be rules. Without them, comedy slops over the edges, identity is lost. He gave a classic Looney Tunes pairing as an example, Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. While it may seem to the audience that these two goofballs are chasing each other all over the desert, they are actually following a strict set of Jones rules. The set of rules began with an initial thought that there should be no dialogue between the two characters, and this led to the expansion of rules that Jones decided should be consistent throughout all of their characters. Yeah, coming up with a common formula for things. Here are Jones's rules for the Coyote versus Roadrunner cartoons, quoted directly from the book. Rule number 1. The Roadrunner cannot harm the Coyote except by going beep beep. That happens at least once in a short, and it's when the Roadrunner is so close to the Coyote, but he doesn't notice until being spooked by the beep beep. Number 2. No outside force can harm the Coyote. Only his own ineptitude or the failure of Acme products. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be force. I'm not sure. Earlier in the book, Jones says that the Coyote's greatest and only enemy is himself. So basically, what they're saying is that only his own ineptitude can do him harm. Doesn't even though we've seen a number of times where trucks have, but usually the trucks that have harmed him per se have been due in part to his own, ineptitude, as they said. Number 3, the Coyote could stop at any time if he were not a fanatic. Jones quotes George Santayana, quote in small quotes here: "A fanatic is one who redoubles his effort when he has forgotten his aim." Unquote. Number 4, no dialogue ever except beep beep. Occasionally, Wile E. Coyote will speak to the audience, but never to the Roadrunner. But sometimes they communicate through signs. Yeah. Again, developing a formula that that does kind of make it different, right? That beep beep has caused a lot of psychic damage to the Wile E. Coyote over the years. Don't underestimate it. And here's Fitzgerald. So I think Wile E. Coyote was meant to be a reference to Tom and Jerry. It could be, yeah. I guess you could argue that the Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote aspect of it. Yeah, you could see that in the from the same elements of Tom and Jerry. I think number 5, the Roadrunner must stay on the road. Otherwise, logically, he would not be called the Roadrunner. Can't be a Roadrunner if you're not on the road. All action must be confined to the neutral environment of the two characters, the Southwest American desert. Number 6. In retrospect, this environment is a lot of fun. The desert provides plenty of opportunities for different action scenes with all the cliffs, mountains, ravines, and miles of road to chase each other on. And here's another point too, if you think about it. Why maybe the scene of having them on the open road there, as it were. Well, think about it. Especially when you're thinking about that, a lot of these cartoons were made in the 50s and 60s, right? Late 50s into the 60s. It wasn't like you have today, where in a lot of cities where you have a lot of crowded cities. But could you imagine if they were doing, even in the cities back then, they weren't like super crowded, but still, can you imagine if they were trying to do this stuff in the cities, and how many other, the whole idea of collateral damage would happen? I mean, you had enough of the cartoons like with Bugs Bunny and all that, like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, set in scenes where you did have some more collateral damage going on, right? I see roadrunners all the time while in Arizona. Um, the custom takes place close to the cartoon takes place close to the Grand Canyon area, but the environment is plenty uniform across the state. Hmm. Hmm. Yep. All right. Uh, let's see. Number 7. All materials, tools, weapons, or mechanical conveniences must be obtained by the Acme Corporation. Acme began as a gag company just for Wile E. Coyote orders. Now, mind you, though, Acme predates the Roadrunner cartoons. It goes all the way back to the 30s. I think it was actually in a Buddy cartoon. Would have been either in a Buddy or a Beans cartoon, one of the two. I think it was a Buddy cartoon where you actually first see the word Acme applied, or any reference to like the Acme Company or Acme Corporation. Let's see. But it expanded to the rest of Looney Tunes whenever a place needed needed a name like Acme Dancing Studio. Yeah, Acme, though, again, as I said, did not originate with Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. It actually predates them by quite a few years. I think the word Acme was used in the mid 30s. I think, as I said, one of the first uses of the word was actually in a Buddy cartoon. So, they even used Acme in Quest for Camelot. All right, so 8. Whenever possible, make gravity the coyotes' greatest enemy. Now, this one has always been played up for comedic effect. I mean, we've seen a number of the situations where either Coyote will like run off a cliff and not realize that there's no more road and he's apparently stays suspended until he looks down and realizes, oh, no more road. Bye. Or you have some situations where he's like on a cliff and the majority of the cliff falls down, but or where he's on one portion of the cliff and the roadrunner is on another, and the bigger part of the cliff that shouldn't fall, is the thing that actually falls. Jones was inspired by Tex Avery, who Jones said, quote, Tex, more than any other director, was fascinated by the limitless possible extensions of the medium. He simply ignored all the physical laws of the universe, with perhaps an occasional nod to the law of gravity, unquote. Mm-hmm. Let's see now. A company that makes everything, or sometimes American companies make everything, used often IRL during wartime, during the Great War. Of course, Acme is a very old word meaning the highest point in Old Greek. Well, with that being said, though, so it's even more comedic here because if Acme is supposed to be of the highest quality, yet apparently all the stuff that Wile E. Coyote gets is apparently pretty low quality. I mean, advertised as high quality. So I believe cartoons spun out of magic shows. Well, I don't know as much about that. I don't know if I totally agree with that. Cartoons are basically a video medium for a comic, basically. You know, it kind of evolved. It went from comic strips to comic books, and then eventually to cartoons. That's basically how I think it more or less worked. So. Number 9, the coyote is always more humiliated than harmed by his failures. This is similar to Jones's approach to Daffy, where the character is not defeated but only temporarily bruised and ready to jump back into the fight for the next cartoon. Watch Bugs Bunny and Friends on MeTV Tunes weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central, 6 a.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific, Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific, and Sundays at 12 noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Pacific. All right, so we have one more article we're going to go over, of course. Let's see. All right. I believe it's why old animation has so much extreme physics violation whenever possible, even if unnecessary. Well, we have to also understand, as I've been discovering, as I've been watching a lot of the golden age cartoons from the 30s. I've been working my way through that shows though. So a lot of the cartoons predating 1948, because that's when you finally the television medium started really picking up on that. Okay. Throughout from the very beginnings in the 1930s and into the early 1940s, cartoon shorts, we see them in package programs today, but a lot of those shorts that we see on the package originally were part of the theater experience. You would a lot of times when families would go to the theaters, as kind of the warm up act, as it were, to the feature, they cartoons were usually put together as part of a package where you'd also get a travel log and you'd get a newsreel. And cartoons back in those days were said to be made. There was humor that would entertain both kids and adults in them. So you had a lot of the shorts that were particularly back in the 30s and 40s were done, to entertain both parents and children during the movie set. Now I see you guys have. So let's see what you get. Let's see how this conversation has gone in that. So it's wild. Okay, yeah. Cartoons are definitely comics turned into motion pictures. The oldest used the word cartoon was a draft on a paper that would be used as a model reference for a later artwork. Let's see now. Then it became illustration, like political cartoons, then comics, then animation. I assume comics evolved out of the funny pages animation was created as an optical illusion, I believe. Let's see. You really need to understand the history of both publication and printing and of caricature to understand this. A lot of good points there, Metal. Let's see now. I think the first animation was created in the circus as a magic trick. Comics are funny pages. The etymological root of comic is comedy. A comic is something who makes people laugh. The guy who made Gertie the dinosaur, McKay, was definitely a magician. Hmm. All right. Well, anyways, getting moving on to the last article we're going to be going over tonight here. So, all right. So Lucille Bliss auditioned for Hanna-Barbera for 15 years before landing Smurfette. So the Smurfs, of course, we've been talking a lot about that lately, as we also know MeTV going to have a special 2-hour celebration of Smurfette this Sunday. So that came out in 1981. So 15 years. So basically, Lucille Bliss had been auditioning for Hanna-Barbera since 1966, basically, before she got. So it was a long road to Smurf Village. Article published today by MeTV and staff. So there's Smurfette right there on a winged pony. All right. So guess what? We've got a fever, and the only prescription is more Smurfs history. Today, we will learn about Lucille Bliss' long journey to becoming Smurfette, co-creator of the Smurfs. Joe Barbera wrote in his memoir, My Life in Tunes, quote, perhaps the only Smurf more popular than Papa Smurf, in brackets there, is Smurfette. And key to her success was a woman named Lucille Bliss, who gave her a voice, unquote. All right. Winder McKay was a vaudevillian performer. There is some overlap with magic shows, but he was never a professional magician. Oh, the Smurfs movie coming out looks terrible. Then again, I assume the Smurfs is aimed at a very young audience. Well, if you watch the original cartoon, it was always kind of more geared towards a younger audience. If you think about it, in comparison, most of the Smurfs are probably considered adolescent age for their particular species. Only, you had Papa, Grandpa, and Nanny Smurf at the older end, and then, of course, the Smurflings and Baby Smurf at the younger end. But I think the rest of them were probably considered like, adolescent to young adult. Anyways, Lucille Bliss' career, like many voice actors, was full of twists and turns. She worked on radio shows, hosted her own local children's television show, and produced talent shows for military service members. At the Embarcadero Armed Services, YMCA, all while auditioning for cartoon roles. She had gotten guest roles on a few cartoons and even voiced Anastasia Tremaine in Disney Cinderella. But she had a hard time getting regular work in voice acting. According to Barbera, quote, Lucille had been coming to the studio regularly for maybe 15 years, auditioning for voices. Unfortunately, we were never able to use her, unquote. Hanna-Barbera's feelings towards Bliss were sincere. They liked her and recognized her talents, but it was hard to place her slightly raspy voice in a cartoon. Bliss had very nearly played Elroy Jetson, but network wanted a boy to voice Elroy. Of course, which we got, I believe it was Mel Blanc. I think it was Mel Blanc who might have, either Mel Blanc or Dawes Butler, one of the two there. I think actually it might have been Dawes Butler, but Hanna-Barbera even tried getting Bliss to go by a pseudonym, Blue Bliss, to trick the network into thinking she was a boy. But Bliss representatives refused to let her be credited by anything other than her real name. The role went to Dawes Butler, that's right, instead. Time went on, and in 1980, Hanna-Barbera was developing Peyo's Smurfs into a 1-hour cartoon show. Barbera recalled, quote, then we came up with the character for Smurfette. Lucille showed up for an audition, and she was absolutely perfect for the part. They talk about hard work. Hard work eventually does pay off, doesn't it? Persistence usually does pay off. You could not have dreamed up a voice any better, unquote. In an interview with the Television Academy, Bliss recalled the auditions as more of an interview where she answered questions like, quote, what kind of person do you think Smurfette would be, unquote, and she was given scenarios to act out Smurfette's reaction. Let's see. Bliss got a call back, and amidst her excitement, her agent tried to bring her back down to earth, saying, quote, there's only one female character in it, so don't hold your breath, unquote. It's true, she was competing with June Foray and other more experienced voice actors, but Bliss refused to give up because she believed in Smurfette. 2 auditions later, she got the call from Hanna-Barbera. She got Smurfette. Kind of funny. She was competing with June Foray for the role of Smurfette, and they actually both ended up getting cast. Of course, Foray got cast as Jokey Smurf, and then later, of course, Mother Nature, I believe, while Bliss got the role of Smurfette. So, figure. From her first line, Barbera knew Bliss's Smurfette was destined to be a hit. Quote, when she appears among, in bracket, the Smurfs, parentheses, one of her very first lines is, quote, do you like what you see? It was a line Lucille delivered with a husky coyness and allure that worked beautifully, and it was from that moment of her introduction that the show really took off, unquote. Watch the Smurfs on MeTV Toon Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 Central, 2 Pacific. Alrighty then. Oh, there we go with that. So that is the last of the articles for today. So now we're going to move on to the wrestling wrap-up here. Move on to the wrestling wrap-up. So with that, let's go ahead. let's take a quick peek at last night's Dynamite, which was last night's Dynamite, which of course is go home Dynamite before this weekend's All In pay-per-view. The opening of the show saw a confrontation between AEW Women's World Champion Toni Storm and her challenger at All In, Mercedes Moné. Moné tried to get the upper hand on Storm, only for Storm to basically beat her out of the ring. Balin had her nearly hit Moné's move, the Moneymaker. Then we move on to the first match that saw Don Callis family members Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita teaming up as a team known as Protoshita to defeat Bandito and Ring of Honor World Champion Bandito and Brody King in a tag match, in a prelude to, of course, Bandito and Takeshita's match coming up on this Friday, tomorrow night, at Supercard of Honor, in which Bandito will be defending the Ring of Honor World title against Konosuke Takeshita from the Don Callis family. Ricochet defeated Blake Christian in a one-on-one match. Then in a match to determine the number 2 spot in the women's Casino Gauntlet match, the four-way match had Megan Bain winning over Queen Aminata, Ty Mallow, and Thekla. Samoa Joe defeated Wheeler Yuta in a singles match. And then the Death Riders duo of Claudio Castagnoli and AEW World Champion John Moxley, teaming with the Young Bucks of Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, defeating the four-man team of the Ops of Katsuyori Shibata and Powerhouse, who along with Samoa Joe are the AEW Trios champions. And Adam Page and Will Ospreay. So that's all that went down on last night's. That's all that went down on last night's Dynamite. Now looking ahead to tonight's Collision, what to expect on tonight's Collision. Move right into that, as it were. On tonight's Collision, coming from the Curtis Culwell Center in Garland, Texas. Already slated for the match for tonight's Collision include singles match between Mystico and Beast Mordos, and an 8-man tag. FTR of Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler will be teaming up with the Patriarchy's Christian Cage and Nick Wayne. Nick Wayne, currently the current Ring of Honor World Television Champion, to go up against the Outrunners of Turbo Floyd and Truth Magnum and Jet Speed, Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey. The Jet, Kevin Knight, and Speedball Mike Bailey, as of course the Patriarchy and Jet Speed will be involved in a triple threat tag team title match at All In this Saturday, going after the Hurt Syndicate. So apparently, you guys, let's see here. Yeah. Okay. Thought for a moment that I might have missed the chat, but I didn't. So, anyways, getting back to talking about. Okay, so, anyways, so that's coming up on tonight's collision, as it were. Now, also tonight, there'll be, of course, Ring of Honor, and so we'll look ahead also to tonight's Impact, TNA Impact, and Ring of Honor Club. On tonight's Impact, as they prepare for next Saturday's Slammiversary event coming up on next Saturday. Tonight's event, which will be on Access TV with Matthew Rainwalt and Tom Hannafin on commentary, we'll see Victoria Crawford taking on Indy Hartwell. And then in a tag team match, TNA Knockouts World Champion Masha Slamovich teams up with Lei Ying Lee to take on Fatal Influences Fallon Henley and JC Jane. JC Jane, of course, the current NXT champion. Of course, now a match that has been set up, and Zara Brookside will be in the corner of Lee and Slamovich, while Jasmine Nix will be in the corner of Fatal Influence. Now, JC Jane has a title defense this Saturday at NXT's Great American Bash against Jordan Grace. The winner of that match will then go on to challenge Masha Slamovich in a title versus title match at Slammiversary. Steve Maclin defends the international title in a three-way match versus Jake Something and Mance Warner. In a non-title tag team match, the Knockouts tag team champion, the Elegance brand of Ash and Heather by Elegance, with M by Elegance personal concierge in their corner, take on the team of Myla Grace and Harley Hudson. And in the main event, we'll see an 8-man tag match in kind of a prelude to the upcoming four-way TNA World Tag Team titles matchup. The Hardy Boys of Jeff and Matt Hardy team with the Rascals, Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz, to take on the team of TNA World Tag Team Champions, the Nemeth brothers, Nick and Ryan Nemeth, and First Class of AJ Francis and Casey Navarro. So that's all that's happening on tonight's Impact. Now to go ahead and go to look ahead to tonight's Ring of Honor Club as they prepare for this took a lot longer than I thought. They prepare for tomorrow night's all right, today's the 10th. That's right. I slightly forgot what day it is today. Oh boy, I'm in a bit of a. Oh, today's the 10th, which is a Friday. Or a Thursday, rather. So, oh boy. All right, so slightly kind of lost myself there for a moment, as it were. Yeah. All right, so that's right. So on tonight's Ring of Honor Club, coming from Access Showwave Center in Kent, Washington. Atlantis and Atlantis Jr. will be taking on the Spanish Announce Project by Angelico and Serpentico in the opening match. In an 8-man tag match, you have on one side the Ring of Honor World Tag Team and World Six-Man Tag Team Champions of Dustin Rhodes, Sammy Guevara, and the Von Erichs, Marshall and Ross Von Erich, taking on the four-man team of the Grizzled Young Veterans of James Drake and Zach Gibson, and the premier athletes of Aria Davari and Tony Nese. Of course, the Sons of Texas of Guevara and Rhodes, and the Von Erichs. The Von Erichs, who are also the co-holders of the six-man tag titles with Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara, his world tag team partner. Aaron Solo takes on Adam Priest in a singles match, in a Pure Rules match in preparation for the upcoming tournament. Deonna Purrazzo will be taking on Rachel Ellering. So that's all we got for the It is definitely today and not either yesterday or tomorrow. Yep. Bye-bye, everybody. So anyways, with that, we're done with the wrestling wrap-up. So that means we are now down to the we're now down to this day in each history. Today is Thursday, July the 10th, 2025. You know how that sometimes happens. Everything kind of, they can get a little screwy sometimes. Never know. But anyways, with that being said, let me just go ahead and take a look at everything here. So 2002, 2000, 2015, and then 2010. So 2010, 15, 2015, 2000, and 2002. All right. So with that, today is Thursday, July the 10th, 2025. So let's take a look back at this day in each history. History! So, first off, I'm going to head back to the year 2000. On this date in the year 2000, WCW held its Monday Nitro event. On this date back in the year 2000 from the Jacksonville Coliseum in Jacksonville, Florida, 25 years ago today. This was the night following the Bash at the Beach pay-per-view with Tony Schiavone and Scott Hudson on commentary. Dave Penzer was your ring announcer. The main event saw in a number one contender, four corners contendership match for the WCW World Heavyweight title, which was apparently vacated earlier in the show. Jeff Jarrett defeated Goldberg, Positively Cannon, and Scott Steiner to become the number one contendership. Chronic, after having won the title the previous night, Brian Adams and Brian Clark defended the WCW World Tag Team titles over Corporal Occasion and General Erection of the Misfits in Action. In a hardcore title 2-on-1 handicap match, Big Vito defeated Norman Smiley and Ralphus. And the show opened up with the franchise, Shane Douglas, with Torrie Wilson in his corner, defeating Crowbar with Daphne in his corner. So that all happened 25 years ago today. So now, as we now get ready to move on to the next piece of niche history, on this next, as we move ahead to the year 2002, on this date in the year 2002, which was 23 years ago today. On this year, 23 years ago today. The 70th issue of Blade of the Immortal from Dark Horse's Dark Horse manga imprint went on sale on this date back in 2002. Sold for $2.99, was 32 pages. So on this date in 2002, the 70th issue of Blade of the Immortal went on sale on this date back in 2002. Now, getting ready to move on to the next piece of niche history. As we move ahead to the year 2010. 2010 here. On this date in the year 2010, OLM's Pokemon Zoroark Master of Illusions premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in 2010. So Pokemon Zoroark Master of Illusions is a 2010 Japanese animated adventure fantasy film directed by Kunihiko Yuyama. It is the 13th theatrical release in the Pokemon franchise and the fourth and final film of the Diamond and Pearl series. In the film, the businessman and media owner Gringa Kodai plans to absorb the time ripple that appears in Crown City to renew his ability to see into the future, which will destroy the city's greenery. So that's basically what you have there. So now, getting ready to move on to the next. So on this date in the year 2010, 15 years ago today, Pokemon Zoroark of Illusion premiered in Japanese theaters. So now, yeah. All right. So now, the final piece of niche history here we'll go over tonight. On this date, 10 years ago today, back in 2015, released digitally on this date, Scooby-Doo and Kiss Rock and Roll Mystery. It's a 2015 direct DVD animated crossover comedy mystery film, the 25th entry in the direct video series of the Scooby-Doo films. Was released digitally on this date back in 10 years ago today, the digital release of Scooby-Doo and Kiss Rock and Roll Mystery. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I'll be back here, of course, with more niche news tomorrow. Also, don't forget this Sunday, I'll be Apex from Apex Comics will be with me this Sunday. I mistakenly said Metal, but it was actually Apex this Sunday. Metal's next Sunday. Just letting you know ahead of time, my friend. This Sunday we'll, of course, be going over comics went on sale in June of 1940. This week we'll be focusing in on Archie. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.